We're live. Greetings. I'm Mona Yesrael here. Solonomics chats. We are back. I wanted to come back like yesterday and go over another article, but the vibe wasn't there. What actually happened, I was trying to look at and welcome for those new subscribers. I was like, oh, Mona, you forgetting to tell them subscribe, give a shout out, leave a comment, share, support the channel. Information coming forward. I actually wanted to watch. Once I got caught up, I wanted to watch for those who don't know, things that deal with historical pieces, slavery, pre-slavery type of conversation. I like to watch. So there was something coming out of Europe, the BBC called The Long Song, right? And so I downloaded the thing, went on the BBC app, all of that. So now I'm like, oh wow, I had it up there for 2 days, y'all. 2 whole days I had the thing up there. So I come back now. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm about to get it in, because I'm about to watch this series. So I can watch for myself and give a review. Because at the same time, I never read the book, so I ordered the book. Do you know they're gonna talk about out of the UK cannot watch copyright, blah blah blah. And I was, needless to say, I was tight. So I was all the way done. And I was like, you know what, forget this, on to other things. So I actually wanted to talk a little bit about an article that I saw about a pastor and a $200,000 car to his wife. Yeah. But instead, I saw this article that, again, I'm looking for things that can paint the picture of my theory that eventually I'll write the book on about slavery being a domestic violence. That's the easiest way for you to understand this slavery in this diaspora. And if we do the research in that space of domestic violence and the way in which it affects the victim as well as the oppressor, then we could kind of get a more grasp on our reality that we are living in this diaspora. So this article that came up when we spoke about before, we read a few videos ago, we read domestic violence, just a textbook definition of what it is and different spaces in which the person may be exploited in sexually, physically, emotionally, financially, religiously. So the other one had to do with religious exploitation and by extension passing on. So I may come back to that article, but this one came across the desk and I was like, this is an interesting article. So stay tuned as I pull this up so we can take a look at what's going on here. What's going on here? Shout out to everybody who just joined us. So I'm gonna share my screen. Share the screen, share the screen. Oh, chill. No, not that. And then we're gonna look at, oh no, what did they do in my article? Oh, here we go. A quote unquote black man tried to cash a paycheck. The bank called 911. Full stop. Full stop. Remember, we're talking about a system that extracted the labor of our foreparents, went on to say, boy, what you doing with this, what you doing with that. And even we see it in today's time, even before this time, months and years have passed, and this whole Colin Kaepernick discussion where you should be satisfied with what I give you. And if you have anything that doesn't look like I gave it to you, I have the right to interrogate you, right? I'm sorry, I see, anyway. So this is the title. The so-called black man tried to cash a paycheck. The bank called 911. Paul McCown's story of, quote, blanking while black, end quote, is the latest incident in 911 being called on people of color for no reason. We saw the Park Becky. We saw the 911 called on the little children. I forgot what they were selling. So again, that's why it's an ongoing trend. Apparently, the man trying to get into his condo or his home and the woman blocking the way. It says less than a month into a new job, Paul McCown went to a bank in Brooklyn, Ohio to cash his first paycheck. But instead of getting his money, he found himself in handcuffs after bank employees called the police. It's just the latest incident in a steady growing list of quote unquote black people who have been subjected to 911 calls and police intervention over completely innocuous behavior. This is nothing new. Eventually, I'm going to get to the old scripts. Eventually, I'm going to get to the old scripts that document this, but then I have to change gears. But when I do, I'm going to bring out some of these, boy, what you doing around these parts? That's a mighty nice jacket you got there, boy. You know what I mean? On December 1st, McCown's, a new employee at an electric company, visited a local Huntington Bank branch. Since he wasn't a regular customer at the bank, he was asked to present two forms of identification as well as a fingerprint. Two forms plus a fingerprint. And he readily offered all three. But bank employees were still suspicious of the roughly $1,000 check. And after several calls to McCown's employer went unanswered, they declined to complete the transaction. McCown's then left the bank thinking that was the end of it. Moments later, a police cruiser pulled in front of him. I get in my truck and the squad car pulled in front of me and says, "Get out the car." McCown's told Cleveland 19 this week. As McCown's prepared to leave the bank, an employee had called 911, telling police that the man tried to cash a fraudulent check that, quote, does not match our records, end quote. After being handcuffed and placed in the back of the police cruiser, officers contacted the 30-year-old man's employer. My employer said, yes, he works for me. He just started, and yes, my payroll company does not pay him that much. Does pay him that much, sorry, McCown said. Brooklyn police released him and confirmed that there was no fraud. McCown's later cashed a check at another Huntington Bank location. We accept the responsibility for contacting the police as well as our own interactions with Mr. McCown's, Huntington Bank said, because they see that, this is happening in other space and people losing their jobs and all kind of stuff. Like, this is not the time to be playing with that type of behavior. So they quick, like, yeah, we did it, my bad. Huntington Bank said in a statement this week, anyone who walks into a Huntington branch should feel welcomed. Mm-hmm. According to the Washington Post, Brooklyn Police Chief Scott, Melky, said that there have been close to a dozen cases of police being called out to the Huntington branch since July. So somebody's just, trigger happy, just like calling 911 just because it's Tuesday. All of which resulted in arrest for fraudulent checks. A bank spokesperson confirmed this, saying that the employees who called the police were simply being vigilant. But McCown's argued that this treatment was, so they're trying to say, oh, it's the norm. That's how we do in these parts. You look suspect, we're going to call a popo on you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Living while, let me rewind. But McCown's argues that his treatment was the result of racial profiling. In another story of living while, quote unquote, black, high profile incidents have dominated headlines this year involving African Americans being viewed with suspicion and subjected to 911 calls for simply existing in public spaces. We might go ahead and click on that link so we can kind of, put this all together here. Living while so-called black stories have been in the headlines for months. They're still happening. It's been happening. It's been 8 months since the story of Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson, two so-called black men charged with trespassing while awaiting in a Philadelphia Starbucks, I remember that one, sparked an increase in media reports of quote-unquote black people facing 911 calls over minor or completely non-existent offenses. And they had, what was the name of the laws? Not loitering. Back then, there was like loitering laws. What was it? I'm gonna tell you the name of the law in a minute. My mind. But there was laws like if you were two or three were gathered on the street, or vagrancy laws, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on. I'm gonna look it up right now as we are live. I don't like to give misinformation. Vagrancy laws. Yep. I know I ain't bugging out. It might take me a time to recall something. Right. Hold up. Let me see when it started though, and who it affected. Because when they changed over from the slave-based system to you being a slave because you were criminalized, then they had to make every activity that was seemingly attached to a certain segment of people to be a criminal activity. You understand? And so you have these vagrancy laws that popped up. This is the history of it. Let me see. In Belgium and Germany and Russia, Soviet Union, UK, and United States. See, here we go. I know I'm not bugging. It might take me a little while, get the wheels turning. Oh, heck no. Hold on. Okay. After the American, I paused that one a little bit. Although he wasn't being vagrant, he, came in there on a work check. But nonetheless, after the American Civil War, that would have been 1865. Some southern states passed black codes, and we're going to read that at another time. We're going to read these code noirs, these black codes, laws that tried to control hundreds of thousands of free slaves. In 1866, the state of Virginia, fearing that it would be, quote, overrun with dissolute and abandoned characters, unquote, passed an act of providing for the punishment of vagrants, homeless, and this is even this is crossing color lines even today, because feeding the homeless without without a license or permit now is punishable by law or fining or whatever the case may be. And so you see this extended beyond the melanated community, where even homelessness, where sometimes it's beyond the person's ability to prevent, has been criminalized. But I'll continue. Homeless or unemployed persons can be forced into labor or public or private works for very low pay for a statutory maximum of 3 months. If fugitive and recaptured, they must serve the rest of their time or term at minimum substance, wearing ball and chain. This is 1866 vagrancy laws. So you can go ahead and go back and take a look at this. You can go back and take a look, or maybe we'll look. But I just wanted to, that came to my mind, so I wanted to share that. But let me continue. Where we at? Okay, living while so-called black stories have been in the headlines. We read that. Okay, since then, there's been a seemingly endless stream of stories involving calls to police or 911 on people of color for innocuous activities like babysitting. I never heard that one. I might have to click on that. Babysitting, quote unquote, white children, mowing lawns, selling water, eating at Subway, and entering their own apartment buildings. I saw that one. As living while so-called black incidents have attracted national attention, the conversation around them has often focused on why police are being asked to respond to situations where they are really needed. Earlier this year, Paul Butler, a professor at Georgetown Law and the author of Chokehold: Policing Black Men, told me that unnecessary 911 calls can be especially dangerous by putting so-called black people in unnecessary interactions with law enforcement. When the police are called on African Americans, it has a very negative impact on those quote unquote black people. Even if they're not arrested or beat up or killed, Butler said, you're required to justify your existence. Like, what are you doing here? Where are you going? And your presence in a quote unquote white space. That's why I said it goes back to, this is mine and you are just being allowed here. It makes you feel like less of a citizen and less of a human being. It's impossible to overstate the adverse consequences. McCown's incident is also an example of the struggles of the quote-unquote black bank patrons. In November, a quote-unquote black woman named Satara Monroe filed a racial discrimination lawsuit against Wells Fargo, arguing that the bank refused to cash her check and accused her of fraud. In July, a 78-year-old quote-unquote black woman named Barbara Carroll filed a similar suit against Wells Fargo, saying that she was accused of fraud, that police were called to the bank over a $140 check. Other stories of quote black end quote bank customers being confronted by police have received attention in recent years. After this quote banking while black end quote incident, McCown says that he wants an apology from the bank and for a change in how the bank handles customers who don't have Huntington accounts. The person who made that phone call, the manager, that teller, whoever made that phone call, I feel as though they were judging, he told Cleveland 19 News. So y'all know which one I'm about to go click on next, right? I gotta click on, I never heard this one before, but let me check on everybody, make sure everybody's doing well before we proceed to this one that has captivated my attention here, which is babysitting. Wow. That sounds crazy. I never heard that story. I heard some of the other ones, but hold on 1 second. I don't want to let go of the screen because this thing be acting up. Babysitting while black. Georgia woman calls cops on quote black man taking care of two. Oh. This was October. That was interesting. Hold on 1 second. I know we didn't have this one on the agenda, but let's take a look at this, shall we? 90% of women have Okay. If anybody want to have anything to say, feel free to share. It doesn't make sense in light of what happened. They weren't crying. They weren't distressed. Corey Lewis, a quote black man, end quote, was leaving a subway in Marietta, Georgia on Sunday with the two, I'm sorry, quote, white kids he was babysitting when a white woman approached him. She asked if the kids were okay. Why wouldn't they be okay? Lewis responded, according to the interview with NBC News. The woman didn't relent, Lewis said. She followed him to his home, which Lewis recorded on Facebook Live and afterward called the police on him. Lewis called the incident, quote, babysitting while black, end quote. As he sees it, there is simply no reason the woman called the police on him besides his race, because the kids were totally fine. The children's mother, Dana Mango, defended Lewis to the police. She recalled asking the officer, "Are you telling me that because a woman saw a young African American male with two quote unquote white kids that they were pulled over by the police?" The cop reportedly responded, "Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. That appears to be what happened." It doesn't make sense in light of what happened, Mango said. They weren't crying, they weren't distressed. Lewis is a friend of the children's parents and runs a youth mentoring group in Georgia. The woman who called the police on him has not been identified. The story has drawn national attention as the latest example of, quote, living while black, unquote. When so-called white people call the police on so-called black people for no discernible reason other than suspicion due to their race. Okay, living while black is getting more attention. Earlier this year, Starbucks employee, and then they're going to go into the Starbucks. I just wanted to go see, thank y'all for bearing with me. I just wanted to go see what in the world that was about. So dude takes them to to the, what's the name of the place? He takes them to the subway and he gets hemmed up. That's everything. Like, what is he? But on the same token, if it's the other way around, but we'll get into that another time. But I'm not going to stay long today. And this is not about necessarily pointing the finger. This is about being aware. This is about being aware of the reality of the situation, especially in this day and time when certain images are being projected onto the screen, certain closed off mentalities are formulated. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has the right to uh, how they perceive their reality. Unfortunately, many people's reality are not necessarily based on their personal experiences or truth. It's based on perception. And because perception, when we're talking about mass media, now social media has been able to break it up. Some people still following the tracks of mass media, but social media has been able to allow the authentic, true voice of the individual to speak. And unfortunately, the voices of many of our people have been so denigrated that they have internalized, like people like to say, they internalize their oppression, and no one needs to write a bad script for you anymore because you're just doing it yourself, which is, for instance, like I said, I don't watch a lot of what, because even when we were growing up watching certain things, it wasn't, there was still probably a little level. There was things that was veiled. If you was a child, you wouldn't know what they were talking about. But today, that whole thing is lifted. And so I just had an opportunity to say, let me take a look at, oh, I know what happened. I told y'all I got the little thing for HBO so that I could watch the Sandra Bland thing. So before, that trial period is up, I said, they keep talking about this Insecure series. Let me take a look. Maybe I'm just picky. Maybe I'm a prude. But this is the second show or series that I've seen. The first one is Being Mary Jane, which comes on BET, that for some reason, the melanated woman is so lowered in the sight of the people that these scenes that are supposed to be intimate, these scenes that are supposed to be, they have been like, even allowing themselves to just be presented to the world as just low in my esteem. Like, I'm like, wow, like, are you naked? Like, have you no clothes on? Like, why are you exposing yourself? Like, are you gonna have children? Are they gonna grow up and see you? Is this for a paycheck? And so then we have these little children who are 13 and 14 and 15 watching some stuff that we never really exposed to on what would be classified as regular TV. And they mimic these behaviors. And it's sad. I'm like, I couldn't even finish watching because I'm like, the way you speak, the way you address one another. If and she has writing in that particular show, if I'm not mistaken, she has authorship in writing of the scripts, like calling each other bees. And for the Angry Black Woman Syndrome Revisited, I actually went back to some shows that I remember, like 2000s, 1990s, and I remember counting. Somebody did a bee montage, and I put it in the book because I was just floored. This is when this verbiage and this language started coming in heavily on TV. Because first time you couldn't drop B words on TV, and I forgot. I have to look at the book. Hold on. I'm gonna have to get up and look at the book. How many times? I'll get it for you guys next time. How many times the B word was used? They did a montage of B, calling each other. What are you doing for a paycheck? For a paycheck? The image that you represent for a paycheck. The thought was, and I've said this before. Some prefer to do entertainment throughout the ages because the thought was it was an easier gig than the hard black breaking labor. So if you were in the fields, it was an easier gig to do entertainment and travel with master. When the what did they call minstrel shows came up, and they started using melanated people in blackface to do the shows, it was an easier gig than, because you still had a level of prestige, even though you were oppressed, even though you were a slave in entertainment. The thought was you still had a bit more of easy money, but you misrepresented yourself and you misrepresented the people in which you come from. And you allow the world to see this image because you wanted to make easier money. And you can't be like, it's on record that those who win these prestigious idols, people are going after idols. That's another story. But these so-called prestigious awards, the majority of the people have to show such a bad, not the majority, almost all. Either you have to be a slave, a gangster, a so-called angry black woman. You have to whore out yourself. You have to do something that is unseemly in order to say, yes, this is the image. You did such a good job in this movie. Denigrating your people. It's like, what in the world? What in the world? What in the world? And so we have to take back the narrative. We have to know the narrative. We have to purge this information because, like, again, this is the culture that the children are feeding on. And a lot of people like to blame the children. The children are not supposed to be raising themselves. The television is not supposed to be raising the children. The streets are not supposed to be raising the children. Social media are not supposed to be raising the children. Nicki Minaj, whomever she is, and this person, and some of these people, I don't even know their name. People be like, oh, they're so famous. I'll be like, yo, what song they sing? Because I don't know what song that is. That's not even music. I don't even know what that is. But don't get me started going down that. I don't know what some of this stuff is. But I know what it does, though. What it does is robs the soul. Okay? Robs. So I saw this, and I'll leave it at this. I was just on seeing somebody from last year for Christmas, their Xmas business. The children were misbehaving, and these look like bigger girls. Like they weren't like small; they had to be like middle teens. And so the mother thought it was a good idea to video this on the computer, and because a lot of things now are videoed for mass consumption, people in their drawers and everything, just mass consumption. I don't know, but she wrapped up all of these boxes, but the boxes was empty. And the caption is, these young women were misbehaving, and so they get nothing. The attitude, the spirit that was on one of them children. I'm like, yo, Mom Dukes, put the camera down and step to her. Like, why are you videoing this for the world to see? There's apparently something going on with that child. Why she think that she can like throw full-fledged tantrums? You know what I'm saying? Full-fledged kicking and a flailing and a carrying on, and you videoing this. Do you not know that that reflects on you as a parent? So in the parents, the generation of parents in their quest to be accepted by their peers, the 30-somethings and the 40-somethings, they're willing to reveal the fact that parenting-wise, They leave a lot to be desired. So that behavior of your child is reflecting you. I don't think they get one woman. Yeah, I don't even know why I'm going down this course. I was talking about the guy, but living while black. But one woman was so upset with her daughter, who, as she grew, she didn't tidy herself properly after her menstruation. She didn't clean herself properly, and it was unsanitary. And the woman thought it was a good idea to take the camera and go into the bathroom spaces and video it and put it on social media. And I'm like, yo, moms, you do realize that's a reflection of you, right? Like, you're the woman who's supposed to teach the child how to tidy herself and cleanse herself and make sure all of these things are in place. So while the thought may be like, I don't know how you got this way, the generation before is not taking personal responsibility for what is happening with the children in this day and age. Like, I remember, see, now I'm gonna have to tell you, I know I look 16, but I remember 80s and 90s where there's a whole lot of latchkey children. And you see it today, the effects of the latchkey child, the effects of the child who comes home, the parents are at work. So the child at 7 and 8 and 5 years old have to learn how to walk home from school, open their own door, prepare their own food. There's no government and supervision, nobody in the home for however long. This stuff has long-reaching effects. And we're seeing it today. You know what I'm saying? So if we don't take back the reins and correct them, because children can't grow themselves. So the expectation of children being able to grow themselves and shaming the child without putting the parent and giving the parent the responsibility that is due unto them is off. Maybe we'll come back again another time and speak about the spirit in which these children are being created. I'll talk about that another time. But anyway, I don't even know how I got over here. But thank everybody for tuning in. I put the link in the box if you wanted to catch up on that. And really, it's not just only about what's happening, it's also understanding why it's happening and kind of get a handle on where do we go from here. Amathia, Amathia in the house. Why not? When her people aren't any longer pushing standards of decency. The sad truth, the social stigma once associated with these behavior has been taken away. Right. Not only is it taken away, but you cannot even get paid to flaunt and showcase such. Yeah, you can get paid. And I think that is what you're saying is actually the incentive of many of these people to continue that. Because with each one, it has to be wilder, it has to be crazier, it has to be more lit, it has to be more turned up. So increasingly, people want this behavior to be more ratchet and more ratchet and more ratchet. And this is what you see with the reality TV shows. Like, make it louder and make it bigger and like live this stereotype. And well, like I said, this is why I wrote the book, Angry Black Woman Syndrome Revisited, because in this book is where I wanted to know where the stereotype was coming from and why is this narrative just repackaged and pushed and repackaged and pushed. And if you come in any other way but in the way that the masses think you should come, something is up. Right? It's either you're going to be the Jezebel, you're going to be the Mammy, you're going to be the Sapphire, which is the other side of the angry Black woman, which is the other side of the independent woman. But maybe we'll talk about that. I haven't talked about that in a while, but it's like different sides of the same individual, just manifesting it differently. The Mammy has accepted her space in society and known that, listen, this is the only way in which I'm going to get my value is by supporting the system. Right? And then you have the supposed Jezebel, which is another story. I don't know why she called it Jezebel, because Jezebel's situation didn't have anything to do with sexual relations, but whatever. The Jezebel is the name that's put on the feminine principle who uses her sexuality to progress and get to where it is that she feels she needs to be, akin to the gold digger, right? By the way, there's a movie supposed to be coming out, which I found interesting. I shared, and it's speaking about Plasage and the millionaires. What's the name of the movie? Hopefully, I'll be able to see that one because it's supposed to be in America. I know eventually I'll get to see the long song, but I bought the book, so I'll read the book and share my thoughts. But this movie, let me see what the name of the movie is. This movie is supposed to be coming out, and it's dealing with Plasage. And I did a little reading on Placage. For those who don't know what Placage is, it was basically the madame, the woman um, who is paid to kind of match make for the European to be with a melanated or a pretty gal or a mixed kind of Creole type of woman. And she is like they call it left-hand marriage, if I'm not mistaken. She is the woman on the side, but she's well kept. She's a kept woman. Okay, she's the mistress, so to say. And because the French, it's a French word, the French word wasn't as rigid in that area as the British were. This happens a lot in Louisiana, French Louisiana. And so the name of the movie, before I go, let me see what the name of this movie. I know I touched like 50 million points on this one little discussion, but there's a lot to. Okay, where did it go? I'm gonna give you the name of the movie. The name of the movie is. Oh, I thought I shared it here. I guess I didn't. Let me hold on. How's everybody doing today? I'm gonna tell you the name of the movie. It's not out as yet. Okay, I guess I can't find the movie. I can't find the movie. That's strange. I'll find the name of the movie. I know I shared it, but I don't know where it went. Hold on one second. Let me see one more place that I came across it being. I cannot find the name of the movie, people. The movie has disappeared. But there's a movie coming out talking about rich millionaire women during slavery times, which is, some people will be like, what? But yes, and they were into this system of being madames and higher class. I don't want to say escort, but higher class facilitators, higher class facilitators. But anywho, all right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Feel free to share and subscribe, and we'll be back with some more interest. Right now, this is just kind of like off the dome. I'm going to come back with some more structured things down the road. But for now, be inspired, keep your head up, learn, grow, share, and prayerfully we will get the healing that we are in search of. Solonomics 101. We'll see. Everybody have a blessed night.